Got it.
Yep, we got it. It's kind of pointing more towards you.
Is it? Oh, that's
Yeah, so it's heavy on this side. I guess I need to turn this on with. All right. Would you want to know when you are going to die? You want to know, I got 15 years. It's guaranteed I got 15 years. Would you want to know that?
I think I would.
You think you would?
I think I would.
Okay. All right. I don't. Tyler says no way. No way.
The younger you are, the less you want to know.
Yeah.
I'll take 15 years.
If I'm 80, yeah, I got to. Oh, please make it shorter. So,
What was it Brother Shannon always said? Better have your bags packed.
better have your bags back in.
You don't know.
You don't. And, it really comes down to this. Are you living faithfully? If you're living faithfully, whether or not you know your day or not, it doesn't matter. If I live tomorrow, if I live 15 years from now, I live, 30 seconds from now, if I'm living faithfully, it doesn't matter. I think, just in what would go through Hezekiah's mind at the end of every year? If it's 15, is it 15 years from this moment? Is it going to be whatever this date is 15 years from now? Can you imagine when that calendar flips over? Oh boy. Oh boy.
Especially in that last year.
Yeah, like looking around, is there something going to fall on my head? What's it going to be? We don't know how he went, but he obviously went of natural causes. It's a blessing from God in a lot of ways that we don't know when we're going to die. As long as we're living faithfully, it becomes a curse if we're not. So that's kind of one of those questions here. Think about Hezekiah as we go through this. Had he died at that first event, I want you to consider what his life would be like. What would he have endured had he died at the start of 2 Kings chapter 20 rather than the end of 2 Kings chapter 20? All right, anything else to add there? All right, let's look at number 7 then. What was Hezekiah's treatment? What was his treatment plan? What was prescribed to him? Verse number 7. Question 7, verse 7. Yeah, a lump of figs. They put that lump of figs, Isaiah says, take a lump of figs and put it on. That's what they did. Was that what healed him? God healed him. God healed him through the figs, right? So there is
what God said.
Exactly. It reminds me of what we read in 2 Kings chapter 5. We had a leper there, Naaman. What was told to him? Dip 7 times where? In the river Jordan, right? If God's prophet, the spokesperson of God, says, do this to be healed, what should we do? That thing, correct? If he said, take a lump of figs, and he took a lump of fill in the blank, would it work? If Naaman would have dipped in any other river, would it have worked? Would he have dipped 6 times? Would it work? So what does that tell us about the plan of salvation? Physical, in God's illustration here, and spiritual. Do what God prescribes. Right? There are physical things that we have to do, correct? Baptism, that equate to our spiritual healing, salvation. Being baptized in water, that is the requirement. All right? Any comments or thoughts on that? Number 8, what did Hezekiah request after being told he would be healed? I tell you what, he's needy, ain't he? He's been told he is going to be healed. So there's going to be a miracle that he needs, or that he's going to get. But yet, that's not good enough for him. What does he have to have on top of it? All right, you promised me I'm going to be healed. That's a miracle. I need another miracle to prove that you're going to fulfill that miracle. That's a little needy, isn't it? Was he asking that of God, or is he asking that of Isaiah? He's kind of asking that of Isaiah. Prove to me, Isaiah, that you are the spokesperson of God. You brought me this bad news that I'm going to die. Now you're bringing me this good news that I'm going to be healed. What do I believe? Show me a sign. Show me a sign. All right, what was the proof that Isaiah was going to provide to him that it would occur? He asked him a question. He says, Isaiah said, this sign shalt thou have in the Lord, verse 9, that the Lord will do the thing that he has spoken. Shall the shadow go forward 10 degrees or go back 10 degrees? So he's basically asking Hezekiah, do you want the shadow on the sundial, whatever it is? It's not very clear in Scripture. Do you want the shadow to go forward 10 degrees or do you want to go back 10 degrees? And what is his response? It's easy for it to go forward if nothing. Send it backwards. So Hezekiah says, send that shadow backwards. Right? And that's the sign. Now, I looked up, I was looking at my phone just out of curiosity. They had explanations from NASA. I didn't get lost in the weeds on that. We don't really know exactly what happened here. Adam Clark, commentary of Adam Clark said, rather than the earth stopping or rotating backwards to move the shadow, which could God do that? Of course he could. All right? But Adam Clark says rather than God doing that, God could simply take light, which is what creates shadows, isn't it? Objects and the light hitting them. God could refract light any way that he wanted to, couldn't he? So it could be just a simple refraction of light to make it appear that the shadow is moving backwards. What do we know God did in Joshua? Stop the sun from moving for 23 hours, correct? So, and now I know Michael Shepard pointed this out, but you can get online. NASA and the scientists believe they have found a missing day in the history of the world. What is that missing day? Joshua? Could be. God told the sun to stand still, and it did. All right, so God can do anything that he wants to, inside of natural law, outside of natural law. It does not matter. God designed everything, but that was the sign that was given to him. It seems kind of crazy that you've been promised to be healed, and we're going to make it even more impressive by moving shadows backwards. All right? If y'all have a better explanation of that, feel free to say it now. Number 10, how did Isaiah get the shadow of the sundial to move backwards? Verse 11. Is there anything Isaiah did?
He asked the Lord to do it.
He said he cried unto the Lord. Isaiah couldn't do it. It reminds me of what Elijah did. And when he had the 400 prophets of Baal, could Elijah do anything to cause that offering or that test that he had with his word? Could he cause anything in his own power? It was through the power of God. He cried unto the Lord. God holds all those powers. We cannot take on or assume that we have any of that power. Number next. 11, the king of Babylon sent what to Hezekiah? Letters and presents. So we can see here that there is some type of friendship between Babylon and Judah. Now, that relationship, we don't know the details of it, but we look in verse number 6, there is some type of negative relationship between Judah and Assyria. So there's some type of treaty of some sort. And the king of Babylon is pleased to hear that Hezekiah has been healed. If you look in another passage, I believe it's in 2 Chronicles, it probably has to be chapter 32, that's the corresponding chapter. It's not just the simple fact that he's happy that Hezekiah is healed. What do you think the king of Babylon also knows? Not just that he was healed, but how he was healed, right? It says that in 2 Chronicles how he was basically miraculously healed. That word spreads. God, anything that God does for man is for the glory of God. And it offers the world to know who is in control. All right. Number 12, describe Hezekiah's actions towards the Babylonian ambassadors. Verse 13 through 15. Showed them way too much, all right? It says in verse 13, he hearkened unto them. So he took them in, and he showed them all the house. Showed them the silver, showed them the gold, showed them the spices, showed them the precious ointments, showed him his armor, showed all the treasures, and there was nothing in his house, nor where. Dominion, the entire kingdom was shown unto these ambassadors, and Hezekiah didn't hold anything back from them. Why was this action requested? Why was this action questioned by Isaiah? Our second question there in number 12. It says in verse 14, then came Isaiah the prophet unto King Hezekiah, and said unto him, what said these men? And from whence came they unto thee? And Hezekiah answered, they are come from a far country, even from Babylon. He said, what have they seen in thine house? And Hezekiah answered, all the things that are in mine house. Right? Why would he ask those questions? Why was the action questioned by Isaiah?
First, he already knew what he did.
He knew, yeah.
Second, I guess, it kind of seems to me like something similar to giving, like some of the kings have done in the past, which is giving all the gold out of the temple to the enemy to prevent them, from hurting them. But it's almost like giving up not actually physically giving it to them, but giving up the knowledge and, they have so many riches.
Put it in the back of their mind, we might want this later.
Right.
It's like casing the joint.
Right.
If you were to classify Hezekiah's wrongdoing, his sin, because this is a sin, God deemed it a sin. What is his sin? What is he doing? That's wrong.
He's giving them access to something that's God.
All right, absolutely. I just look at the language here in verse number 15. What have they seen in thine house? It is Hezekiah's house. And he answered and said, all the things that are in mine house they have seen. There is nothing among my treasures that I have not showed them. Mine. What do you think? What is the proverb? The book of Proverbs says that something goes before destruction. Pride, right? This is pride. This is the folly that he has. He has a sense of pride. As great as Hezekiah is, as many wonderful things that he's done, as good as he's been described, does he not sin? Can we not all sin? Do we not, just because we're living a good faith life, is there not that temptation that comes before us? He's got these Babylonian ambassadors and he wants to impress them. You brought me a gift. You sent me letters. This is so kind. Look at what it's like. I'm going to take you on a tour of the joint. Look at here. Look at what I've got. All right? And so it's pride. If you look, I guess we'll do this in the next question. What was God's response to Hezekiah's action? 16 through 18.
All carried away, and some of the eunuchs and served to keep out.
So it was such a terrible thing in what he did that God made a promise to him. I've spared your life for 15 years. But in the future, this is what's going to happen. Because of this event right here, this kingdom will be taken away. Judah will be taken away. It'll be robbed. And your children will be captive. Not only that, they were going from a state of blessedness, having everything provided to them from God, to a state of servitude, where they're going to have to serve others. What a degradation in your life that would be. Does anybody know when this would occur? It doesn't occur in Hezekiah's time, but when can we look and see this happen? It takes place in 2 Kings, but what book in the Bible does Babylonian captivity begin? What writer? Who was a eunuch for the Babylonians and his companions? Is it Daniel? It's Daniel, isn't it? Doesn't Daniel get taken away to Babylonian captivity, and doesn't those men have to serve in the king's house? Look at 2 Chronicles 32:31 to give us an idea of how it's described in this passage on his sin here. How does God describe that in 2 Chronicles 32:31? Anybody got that? 2 Chronicles 32:31.
Howbeit the business of the ambassadors and princes of Babylon who sent to him to inquire of the wonders that was done in the land, God left him to try him, that he might know all that was in his heart.
That phrase, God left him that he may try him. That just seems strange to me, right? God is with him. God left him to try him. And did he pass that test? It's not tempted by God, but God wanted to see, he wanted to perfect Hezekiah's heart. He wanted to see what his response would be in this circumstance. Did he not do that to Abraham? Yeah. God does those things, doesn't he? He wants to see how faithful his people are. All right, anything to add? Number 14 then, how did Hezekiah take the judgment of God? Verse number 19. Then Hezekiah said unto Isaiah, Good is the word of the Lord which thou hast spoken. And he said, It is not good if peace and truth be in my days? Question mark. How did he take that information? He had sinned. He had been told what the punishment would be. And he replied with, I accept the punishment. It's acceptable. I have sinned. I am accountable. This is what's done. Now, if you look at that question he asked, is it not good if peace and truth be in my days? Now, I don't know how to really interpret that question. I would like to think that he realizes that he has done wrong, but he also realizes that he has been faithful in his service to God. Peace and truth will reign in his lifetime. God is merciful in that way. But it also leads us to that promise that God's punishment is going to fall on a future generation. All right. If there's nothing to add there, we'll look at the last question here as we close up class. List Hezekiah's accomplishments. Verse number 20. And then if you also will turn back over to 2 Chronicles 32, you can see a more exhaustive list of the things that Hezekiah amassed during his life. It says in verse 20, the rest of the acts of Hezekiah and all his might, and how he made a pool and a conduit and brought water into the city, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? Well, if you look at 2 Chronicles 32, just to read a bit of it, we won't read the whole passage, but it says in verse 24, in those days Hezekiah was sick to death and prayed to the Lord and spake to him, and he gave him a sign, but Hezekiah rendered not again according to the benefit done unto him, for his heart was lifted up. There we see that pride that he had. Therefore there was wrath upon him and upon Judah and Jerusalem. Notwithstanding, Hezekiah humbled himself. So we can see pride, humbleness. For the pride of his heart, both he and his inhabitants of Jerusalem so that the wrath of the Lord came not upon them in the days of Hezekiah. And Hezekiah had exceeding much riches and honor, and he made himself treasures for silver and for gold and for precious stones, and for spices and for shields and for all manner of pleasant jewels, storehouses also for the increase of corn and wine, and oil and stalls for all manner of beasts and coats for flocks. Moreover, he provided him cities and possessions of flocks and herds in abundance, for God had given him substance very much. The same Hezekiah also stopped the upper watercourse of Gihon and brought it straight down to the west side of the city of David. And Hezekiah prospered in all his works. So we can see that he was a very prosperous king, right? We can see that long list. That pool there, if I'm not mistaken, is that not the same pool we read about in the New Testament, in which they would stand around and wait for the waters to move, and the first person to get in there would be healed? Is that not the one that Jesus also went by? That same pool? I think it is. It's the pool of Siloam. I think it's the pool of Siloam. That is the work of King Hezekiah. And I also believe, if I'm not mistaken, that I just recently read, I would say it's been within a month or two, that they've actually excavated that pool in Jerusalem, where they found the pool of Siloam in Jerusalem. Might want to double check me on that, but I believe I did read that about 2 weeks ago. So it's an amazing thing that we can still see those areas today that were done by these men so long ago. All right. What can we draw from 2 Kings chapter 20 that will be applicable for us as Christians? Any thoughts or comments there? Don't ask for more years to your life.
Service is rewarded.
Service is rewarded. Faithfulness is rewarded. Absolutely. Don't let pride get in your way, and that's a tough one for all of us, isn't it? It's a tough one for all of us, for sure. All right. Thank y'all so much for being here. Your comments, your participation, your willingness to study God's Word. We'll do some announcements here in just a minute when everybody gets in, and then Brother Jeremy will extend the Lord's invitation. Here's the book I needed right here. He's holding out on it. Kept it up here. Yeah, it did for me. He did write the questions. He had all the questions written out. He had to send me a picture of them. But he called me at, I think it was 5:05. I was in the middle of middle school basketball practice. So, but it all worked out.
We have a lot of
All right. Thank you again for being here tonight. If you would turn to 272. 272. I've decided to follow Jesus. So Mom she went back to the hospital Sunday night. She was in the emergency room for quite a while until they got her a room, but she had an allergic reaction to the antibiotics she's been on. They'd taken her off those antibiotics. They doped her up with Benadryl to kind of get that allergic reaction down. They started her on a new antibiotic. The new antibiotic was working fine. She was supposed to go home today. Then as they were getting ready to leave, she had another allergic reaction to this antibiotic. So they're taking her off that one. They're going to keep her overnight again. They have to keep monitoring her with the allergic reaction to make sure that there's nothing there. So we don't know if it's just to build up the antibiotic in her system because it's taking 3 or 4 days before that allergic reaction occurs. But hopefully she'll be home here shortly and that they'll find the right treatment for that infection to keep it away. Sister Edna is still in the hospital. She'll be there all week. Katrina said that she is still receiving IV treatment for COVID and also on oxygen. And they're monitoring her pretty closely there. David Payton, battling ALS, talked to him the other day. He is very discouraged right now. He can no longer preach and teach because it's too hard for him to talk. He's not able to get his words out loud enough. They had hired a preacher there about a month ago. He was hoping to go through November, preaching at least once and teaching one class. But I talked to him, so that's what he lived for, was to do those things. So he wants, prayer that he can still have a purpose for God and his service. He is doing all he can to share what he's done in terms of the lessons he's prepared, the materials that he's amassed over his life, and getting those out to people that want them. So please pray for him and his encouragement and strength and the challenges that he has going forward. Laura Zimmerly works at Westside with Mom, battling cancer. Pray for Bobby.
He has a virus tonight.
Has a virus. He can't seem to shake it either. So I know that he would like to feel better, and we want him to as well. So pray for him. His sister, Kim Bennett, her cancer treatments. Daryl Melton, janitor at school, he's still recovering from that at home. Are there others that we need to mention at this time that we may have forgotten? I failed to mention George Montgomery. He is distant relation, was married to one of our cousins at one point. His son graduated from Robertson last year. Brian, and what's Brian's brother's name? Brandon Montgomery, all the big guys down there from the beach. That's their dad. You all may know George. He passed away suddenly last Thursday. His funeral was today. Any others that we need to mention at this time? All right. Well, 272. Hope you all have a great week. We'll send Lord's benediction. Be closed in prayer.
I'm not sure if it's good or bad, but you guys get to study along with me, I guess, in recent days with the opportunity I've had to teach. And so I've been thinking a lot about what is appropriate fear of God? What does the fear of the Lord mean? And what is appropriate in the fact that we fear God? Is it that we are worried that if we don't do what we're supposed to, then we go to hell? Is it that, if we have a reverence for God, really looking for an answer in the Bible, trying to seek out what does the Bible say about an appropriate fear of the Lord. And so I thought about it. As I was going through Isaiah, something came across, made me realize that there's an inappropriate fear of the Lord. So we first have to know that. So what's the inappropriate fear of the Lord? Well, God talks about it throughout the Bible. We've been studying it some in the Kings. What God has done to peoples who have been his enemies, the enemies of his people, how he crushes the enemies. He goes after nation, destroying them. And they feared him. Some of them, if they had a reality check, they sometimes feared God. They feared him with the fear of man. Even sometimes they feared God almost in the appropriate way. Still not the right way, but we've seen men say, "Oh, well, your God is the only God." And then they go right back to serving whatever idols or whatever service they have. But I ran across this in Isaiah. In Isaiah 29:13, it reads, "Wherefore the Lord said, for as much as the people draw near to me with their mouth and with their lips do honor me, but have removed their heart from me, and their fear toward me is taught by the precept of men." So this chapter in Isaiah is talking about how Israel has stepped away from God, and they praise him with their lips, and they say the right things, and they act like they're going to do the right things, but that's all they do. And the rest of it is, and they have a fear of God. They really, truly fear him. But it's fear that came from man, from whatever man's understanding is here. This is the fear that's the wrong type of fear to have. We don't fear God because I don't think we fear God because he will destroy us if we don't do what he says. I don't think that's at least what the fear of the Lord means. The fear of the Lord means something more specific. And so if we wait and listen for man, or if we follow man down the wrong path, then we have the wrong fear. And that fear is as bad as saying the right thing to God and not doing it. That fear is a waste. That fear doesn't do you any good, just like it doesn't do the nations any good that are saying, well, we're afraid to go up against that nation because God's backing them. That didn't do them any good. It didn't get them to the right place. And so how does the Bible represent the fear of the Lord? And so I've been looking for a place where it says exactly what it is. And I ran across in Proverbs 8 and verse 13. Proverbs 8:13, this is obviously Solomon talking. And he says, "The fear of the Lord is to hate evil." And then he describes evil. He says, "Pride and arrogancy and an evil way, and the froward mouth do I hate." So this is true fear of the Lord. Fear of the Lord is that when you serve God and you understand what God's path is, that you become like God. You want to serve righteousness, and also you hate evil. That's what true fear of God is, I think. I'm sure it has other meanings and goes further than this, but this really stuck with me in my study of fear of God. This fear is really looking toward our service. It's looking toward your desire to be righteous. If your desire is to be righteous like God, you hate evil as much as he does. That's what fear of God is. You love righteousness and you hate evil. So I think this is what what I think I'm building on at this point. Now, I don't know that this is the end of the fear of the Lord, but I know that this is at least the start from where I've studied of where your fear of the Lord should be. It should be on hating evil. And so I think everyone here, for the most part, does hate evil. But I think it's important that I just continue to visit what is true fear of the Lord. Maybe it's something you can study, and hopefully if you study it and find something else, you'll bring it to my attention. But it really made sense to me. And I think a lot of times it doesn't make sense that you're supposed to fear God. That doesn't make sense to a lot of people because it doesn't say exactly what that is. And I really enjoyed reading that and really stuck with me. So I'll end by offering the invitation to anyone that fears God or hates evil so much that they would like to offer their lives in service of righteousness. We're ready to baptize those that have not obeyed the call of God to serve at this point. We also offer the opportunity for anybody who needs our prayers that has already obeyed to let us serve you on your path to living righteously. So if you have any reason to come forward at this time, please do as we stand and sing.
Decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back. No turning back. My cross I'll carry till I see Jesus. My cross I'll carry till I see Jesus. My cross I'll carry till I see Jesus. No turning back. I'll follow Him.
Our God, our Father in heaven, we come to thee thankful for the time we've had to come together to consider a portion of our words and thank you for all the members of the congregation. Father, that should be each one of us, each family, help us to be stronger than we were more each day. We're also thankful, Father, those that are sick, those who are numbered that are suffering at this time. We ask you to be with them also. Be with them, Father, bring them back quickly and safely. Our Father, we ask you to be with each one of us as we go our separate ways. Bring us back Sunday for the next worship hour. Just pray in Jesus' name.
There is a men's meeting next Sunday at 5.
You know what's our friend's name? Yeah.